There is a trait, quiet, subtle, and often celebrated, that hides in plain sight. It masquerades as perfectionism. It cloaks itself in high standards. It wears the mask of discipline. But at its control, the compulsion to control. We all seek structure, predictability, and mastery over life. But when the need for control becomes excessive, it does not make us stronger. It makes us prisoners of our own minds. Jung teaches us that what we repress, what we fear, becomes our shadow. And the controlling personality fears uncertainty, fears surrender, fears vulnerability. It does not trust the natural unfolding of life. It tries to bend it. But here's the truth: the more you grip life with a closed fist, the more it slips through your fingers. Control, when rooted in fear, is a dangerous trait. It limits spontaneity. It smothers growth. It kills love. It's time to unmask it, to look it in the eye, to understand what it's truly costing you. You must become the master of your inner world, not the manipulator of the outer one. The urge to control others, outcomes, and even the smallest details of our lives often stems not from strength, but from an inner sense of fragmentation. What appears as decisiveness and dominance on the outside is frequently a cover for deep inner turmoil. When the inner world is unstable, filled with unresolved wounds, emotional pain, or unacknowledged fears, the psyche instinctively looks for ways to regain a sense of order, and the easiest way to simulate that order is by trying to dominate the external environment. This reaction is unconscious. The person may not realize they're trying to fix an internal imbalance by manipulating the world around them. But Jung teaches us that the outer world is often a mirror of the inner world. If you feel chaos within, you may unconsciously try to create structure outside, setting rigid rules, controlling people, overplanning every detail. But no matter how tightly you try to grip the world, you cannot calm a storm that exists inside your own mind. What is needed is not more control, but more awareness. Not more domination of others, but deeper self-exploration. You must ask, what part of me feels out of control? What am I afraid will happen if I let go? What unhealed wound am I protecting by obsessively trying to manage everything? The truth is, the more you try to control life, the more anxious and fearful you become. Because life is inherently uncertain, and uncertainty is not your enemy. It is the gateway to growth, to mystery, to transformation. But the mind that fears its own inner chaos will always misinterpret uncertainty as danger. When you begin to face your own inner fragmentation, not judge it, but understand it, you slowly stop needing to control the outside world. You begin to trust the process of life again. You begin to feel safe even when things are unclear. And that is when real power returns. Not the power to control others, but the power to live fully, freely, and authentically. In truth, the most dangerous chaos is not the one outside you, it's the one you deny within. But the moment you turn toward it with awareness, it begins to lose its grip, and in that moment control is no longer necessary. Inner peace replaces the illusion of control, and your life begins to flow, not by force, but by truth. Letting go is often misunderstood. Many believe it means giving up, losing control, or allowing chaos to take over. But in reality, letting go is one of the most profound spiritual acts a human being can perform. It requires immense courage, not weakness. It demands deep trust, not passivity. When you let go, you are not surrendering to failure. You are surrendering to a deeper intelligence that resides beyond the ego. The ego wants security. It craves security. It needs to feel in charge, to believe it can shape and control every outcome. But life in its very nature is unpredictable. It flows, it changes, it surprises. And when the ego cannot control this flow, it resists, it panics, it tightens its grip. That grip creates suffering, because it goes against the natural rhythm of existence. Letting go means releasing the illusion that you must control everything to be safe or successful. It means trusting that life has a wisdom of its own, that not everything needs to go according to your plan for it to work out in your favor. It is the recognition that some things are meant to unfold in their own time, in their own way, without force. Jung would remind us that the self, the deeper, unconscious wholeness within us, has a direction that often surpasses the conscious mind's understanding. The conscious mind wants answers, timelines, and logic, but the self speaks through symbols, dreams, instincts, and synchronicities. Letting go allows this deeper part of you to lead. It is an invitation for the unconscious to participate in your growth. When you let go, you stop trying to push the river. You learn to flow with it. And in that flow, something magical happens. You begin to notice opportunities you couldn't see when you were obsessing over control. You begin to feel peace in the unknown, rather than terror. You begin to trust that you are being guided, not by fear, but by something larger, wiser, and more ancient than your conscious mind. Letting go is not the absence of responsibility, it is the presence of spiritual maturity. It means showing up with intention, taking action when needed, but releasing your attachment to how things must look. It is surrendering the outcome, while staying connected to your deeper purpose. In truth, you do not lose anything essential when you let go. You only lose the illusions. The need for control, the fear of failure, the ego's rigid demands. What you gain is clarity, freedom, alignment, and peace. To let go is to step into the unknown with open hands, trusting that whatever is meant for you will find you, and whatever is not will fall away, no matter how tightly you cling. And that, in its essence, is a deeply spiritual act. The shadow, the hidden, unconscious part of the psyche, does not merely lie dormant in the dark corners of our being. It actively seeks expression, and one of the most deceptive ways it finds its voice is through control. Control becomes the mask the shadow wears to operate without being noticed. On the surface, it looks like ambition, discipline, high standards, or leadership. But underneath it is often fear, insecurity, and unresolved pain guiding our actions. When we cannot accept certain parts of ourselves, our rage, our envy, our grief, our vulnerability, we push them into the unconscious. We bury them, pretend they don't exist, and try to build a life that appears twin order. But those rejected parts do not disappear. They wait. They grow stronger in the darkness, and they begin to influence us in ways we don't recognize. One of the most common patterns is to try to control everything around us as a way to avoid what we are feeling inside. We try to control people because we fear rejection. We try to control outcomes because we are terrified of uncertainty. We micromanage life because we are running from the chaos inside our own hearts. The shadow feeds off this behavior because it remains hidden while you convince yourself that you are just being responsible, staying in charge, or doing what's necessary. But in truth, you're avoiding the mirror that shows you what you haven't yet faced. Jung warned that we do not bring into consciousness will rule our lives. This is exactly what the shadow does. It thrives in unconsciousness. It thrives when you refuse to sit with your discomfort. It thrives when you focus on fixing the world instead of healing yourself. It uses control as a weapon, a defense mechanism, and a survival strategy. And yet, it always leads to the same destination: suffering, disconnection, and burnout. The moment you begin to loosen your grip on control, the shadow reveals itself. You start to feel the anxiety, the sadness, the helplessness that was hidden behind your constant need to manage, fix, and organize. And while this can feel overwhelming, it is actually the beginning of healing. Because now you are no longer running. Now you are facing the real source of your pain. To transform the shadow is not to destroy it, but to integrate it. It is to recognize that your need for control came from a place of fear, and to meet that fear with compassion. It is to invite the shadow into the light, to listen to it, to understand its origins, and to reclaim the energy you've used to suppress it. Only then can you act from a place of conscious choice rather than unconscious compulsion. In truth, control is never about mastery over life. It is a symptom of separation from the self. When you begin the inner work of facing your shadow, the need to control naturally fades. Because you are no longer terrified of what lies within. You have made peace with yourself. And when that happens, you no longer need to dominate the world around you. You become free. True power does not come from how much you can dominate others, control your surroundings, or force outcomes to bend to your will. That is not power. That is fear dressed in strength. That is the ego's illusion of power, built upon insecurity and the need to prove worth through superiority or perfection. But beneath that illusion lies a deeper truth: the most authentic, unshakable power comes not from external control but internal integration. Integration means embracing all aspects of who you are. The light and the dark, the admirable and the flawed, the conscious self and the hidden shadow. It means no longer dividing yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts, but instead seeing the totality of your being with honesty and compassion. This is what Carl Jung called the process of individuation, the journey toward wholeness. When you are not at war with yourself, you no longer need to project that war onto the world. You no longer need to dominate others to feel strong. because you have already made peace with the chaos inside. You no longer seek control, because you trust the deeper intelligence of your being. You don't manipulate life. You participate in it fully, consciously, with presence and humility. Domination, on the other hand, is always a compensation. The person who seeks to dominate usually feels small, fragile, or unseen on the inside. They try to compensate by imposing themselves on others, by asserting superiority, by appearing invincible. But this kind of power is unstable. It depends on constant performance, approval, and resistance to vulnerability. It isolates rather than connects. It defends rather than understands. It hardens rather than heals. Integration is different. It allows you to access your true self. The part of you that is beyond the ego, beyond fear, beyond the masks. When you integrate, you don't lose your strength, you deepen it. You become more grounded, more intuitive, more connected. You respond rather than react. You lead not from authority but from authenticity. You no longer need to dominate, because you embody presence, and presence itself is power. The integrated person is not perfect. They are real. They have seen their own darkness and chosen not to run from it. They know their wounds, and they have transformed them into wisdom. This kind of inner unity radiates outward. It creates influence without coercion, leadership without force, and love without conditions. In a world obsessed with dominance, integration is radical. It means turning inward when the world tells you to look outward. It means healing what you've been taught to hide. And most of all, it means trusting that your wholeness, not your image, not your control, not your dominance, is what makes you powerful. Real power doesn't come from rising above others. It comes from going deep within yourself and emerging whole. Healing does not begin when everything is finally under control, when all the answers are known, or when the past is perfectly resolved. Healing begins the moment you stop resisting what is and start trusting the deeper current of life itself. It begins when you realize that life is not something to conquer or micromanage, but something to surrender to. A process far wiser, far more mysterious than the conscious mind can fully grasp. The ego craves certainty. It wants a straight path, a clear plan, and guarantees of success and safety. But life rarely offers these. Instead, it moves in spirals, in seasons, in sudden shifts and quiet transformations. There are losses that lead to growth, endings that become beginnings, and moments of darkness that later reveal themselves as sacred initiations. When we fight this natural flow, when we resist change, avoid uncertainty and cling to old identities, we delay our own healing. We stay stuck, locked in a struggle against life itself. Carl Jung believed that healing is not about eliminating suffering, but about finding meaning in it. That meaning often reveals itself not when we are forcing progress, but when we are allowing space. For reflection, for feeling, for transformation. Trusting the flow of life means learning to rest in that space without panicking. It means believing that even if things are unclear or painful now, there is a deeper intelligence at work. Something in you and beyond you that knows the way forward. When you begin to trust the flow of life, you stop rushing your healing. You stop demanding instant clarity and instant peace. You start listening more deeply to your body, to your dreams, to your intuition. You allow emotions to rise without judgment. You let grief take its time. You allow confusion to exist without needing to label it as failure. And in that openness, healing begins to move. Not in dramatic, sudden leaps but in quiet, organic shifts that align with your soul's rhythm. This trust is not blind. It is born from experience. From those moments when you thought you had broken beyond repair, but something within you still carried you forward. It comes from surviving what you didn't think you could survive. It grows every time you face something painful and emerge stronger, wiser, more compassionate. Eventually, you realize life was never trying to punish you. It was trying to awaken you. And healing was never about fixing yourself. It was about remembering your wholeness. When you trust the flow of life, you begin to let go. Not because you've given up, but because you've finally remembered that you are not alone in this journey. Something sacred, something deeply connected to your inner self is guiding you. And when you trust that, even the most painful moments become part of your unfolding. Not obstacles, but invitations to grow. In that trust, healing becomes not a destination to reach, but a path to walk. One breath, one choice, one moment at a time. So ask yourself, are you living? Or are you controlling? Are you allowing your destiny to unfold, or are you choking it? There is a deeper intelligence within you. Trust it. Let go of the reins, and watch as your life becomes not smaller, but far more expansive than control ever allowed.